The NBA Draft Combine is over, and I take some of your questions for about some of the big takeaways coming up on Locked On NBA Big Board. What's up? My name is Richard Stayman. You might know me better as @Mavs Draft. I provide high-quality scouting reports, level of NBA teams, and what they do, as well as just watching a ton of different prospects, high school, college, NBA, whatever it is. You might know me better on Twitter as @Mavs Draft, posting some of that stuff publicly, as well as on my Substack, mavsdraft.substack.com. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So I just got back from the NBA Draft Combine this morning. Leif and I parted ways at 5 a.m. It was a long week. We got a lot of different takeaways coming in from, seeing the measurements, seeing the shooting drills, seeing 60, 70 plus prospects that we haven't seen in person that you just can't get to unless you are actually a travel scout for an NBA team. And we have so many different takeaways. And on top of that, we have the scrimmages. But let's just paint the picture of really what is next. And then I'm going to get to some of your questions. There were a lot of good questions. I posted on Twitter @MavsDraft, just some of the questions that were coming in, takeaways, big picture, specific prospects, whatever it is. But let's just talk about what is next for these top prospects, especially. We'll go down kind of in tiers. So essentially the way this schedule is going to work is the NBA draft is just over a month away. It's a 2-day event for the first time this year on a Wednesday and Thursday. It's kind of awkwardly placed, but it's an experiment that the league is willing to roll out instead of cramming it in one night. I know last year when I went to the draft, I was with Rafael, and we didn't even finish our podcast and wrapping up and leaving until 3 a.m. And if that means this two-way setup gets rid of that alone, I'm for it. Now, however, I do have concerns just about how watchable people will think 31 through 60 is, because it already doesn't get viewed when you have numbers 1 through 60, I should say. So I think that's kind of a concern I have, but there's a lot to come up in this next month. So let's just look at that. I think that's kind of the big change. And in general, here's how I would say things will happen. You'll see individual workouts happen. A lot of teams want to see, was one performance bad, one performance good? Does that translate into a team workout? And it's almost always 3-on-3 workouts. So what they'll do is teams will bring in 6 players. Sometimes it's a group. They try and have 3 different sets. They'll have 2 bigs go against each other, 2 wings, 2 guards. Sometimes it's that simple. Sometimes they'll do a traditional big versus a stretch big. Like you might see Dylan Dessou, for example, work out against someone like Zach Edey. I don't know if that exact matchup will happen, but just 2 different kinds of looks. And the same thing on the wings. You might have AJ Johnson versus just a taller, more skilled, fluid, feel for the game, like a Baylor Shireman, right? Something like that. They may match them up. And then you might get some bully ball kind of guards versus some of the bigger guards. So there's a lot to take away that we won't see. And that really is going to be something that comes out when you see those intel reports of, are some of those things a little bit of smoke that you see from ESPN, The Athletic? Maybe, but generally those 2 get the draft the best. If you are looking to get the most accurate information for draft night, that's what's going to come out, is really when, the source things, a lot of it's not smoke when it comes from them. When you see it from other sources, I'd question it a little bit. Always should kind of go, why is this being posted? Not necessarily the accuracy, but just the intent, because it probably is true. Just why does some information get out and not others, right? So that's kind of the big thing, is for the next month, you'll start seeing that with top prospects in particular. A lot of them, it might change this year. I know last year, a lot of them did their workouts earlier. And if they were brought in for a second, that was at the end. So generally prospects, just to paint the picture for those who don't know, the way it works is prospects they'll start working out right after the combine. I mean, it might be as soon as tomorrow. Like this weekend, we might be seeing that. It also may be some don't even get their first workouts until a while into the process. There are some fringe prospects that don't get it. But the whole point with these top prospects is they want to do as little as possible towards the end so that there's risk for injury. Whereas the guys who need to be improving themselves, they'll be in workouts probably 3 to 4 times a week. I mean, I've heard of a prospect from 2022 that had 8 straight days of workouts. And you can imagine And actually, fun fact, this 8th workout in 8 days was for the Dallas Mavericks. There might have been 7th and 8th, whatever it was, though, like a lot in 1 week. You're cramming an entire week of workouts. And these workouts aren't just like the measurement stuff, right? Where at the combine, they did the shooting drills. It's actual intense 3-on-3 for a while. I've heard of a player who threw up at the very beginning of a workout also in 2022. And you just really don't know what's going to come of it. But ultimately, where there starts to be smoke, there ends up being fire. Now, some of the stuff where it's like, oh, the workout, like if I remember in 2017, Jonathan Isaac with the Suns, they had the 5th pick. They were throwing out these smoke screens saying like, oh, we really like him. We really like him, trying to bait someone else into taking him so that their guy could fall. Eventually, Jonathan Isaac was there and they took Josh Jackson. But ultimately, with the top prospects, what you'll end up seeing is they will go probably in their range. You won't ever see them. Zach Edey, for example, I know for a fact, someone like him, like any of these top guys mocked in the lottery, they're not going to work out for non-lottery teams. There may be a way where, if a team says, hey, we might want to trade up, if it gets serious enough in that regard, like let's just say the Knicks, they have 2 first-round picks in the 20s. If they move into Oklahoma City's range, the Knicks might have Zach Edey. But at the end of the day, teams and agents, they want to make sure nobody's time is being wasted, especially like on the agent side and the player side who's setting it up. They don't want their time being wasted in risk. Like say Zach Edey does go in for a workout, right? For a team that is in the 20s, just using him as an example, because he is the most unique prospect arguably in this draft because of his size, or maybe not unique, but just one of the most just overanalyzed prospects in a way where everybody has an opinion on him. He's a bit polarizing. And they're not going to let him risk injury. So, they're putting players that tear their ACLs in these events. It's basketball. Things can happen. It's really not worth the risk for them. So that's why they want to stay in that. So that's kind of just that beginner's guide, like who, and then, with who works out where, just kind of figuring that out too. Let's just say Reed Shepherd. They probably have their list. They're like, we are not working out for a team past whatever it is. I would guess it's past the 8th pick. That seems pretty counterintuitive at that point. If you know you're going to be a top 8 pick, why work out for 9 through 14? Sometimes it burns him, but like there's so much film that the workout really doesn't change that much. And they still met with these players throughout the combine and other times. It's not like they've never met them or anything. So I think that's just an important background to consider when you look at just in general how the NBA draft works. Again, so you got pre-draft workouts for a while. Some of them you'll start seeing like, hey, these people are working out. I'll probably be posting a few of those because I've done that in the past. Then you'll get some of the big ones. Those are the ones to kind of watch for. So let me take a couple questions before we get to break here. I think I got 30 questions and I was not anticipating that. So mid-range Mitch asked, when's the last class that was worse than this one? Just kind of big picture. It's 2013. 2016 was a little bit close, but there was Ben Simmons. There's a lot more hype. It was considered a hit or miss draft, but I think this one is worse than 2016. So I'd go back all the way to 2013 is probably what I would say is the last one. And then this is something just kind of going hand in hand with what I was talking about earlier with how this process plays out, right? So this is from Jack. He said, for most of us draft hobbyists, we obsess over film and online data points, but can't scout in person. How valuable is going to the combine, physically attending games, etc.? And what aspects can you evaluate more effectively in those situations? Such a great question, Jack. First of all, I have been asked this before. I have been scouting in person for 7 years probably now. And you can tell a lot on film. I would say it's about 80% of it. There are teams that have just people who never travel to a game. They just do video. There's a reason for that. It works. The decision makers, it's a few things. One, you're able to see the whole process from start to finish, right? How do they start? Do they come out with intensity and warm-ups? Do they take it seriously? When they're shooting, like what mechanics do they have? And also at the end, even just with the intensity, do they end as well or is in much more rhythm, the same rhythm as they started? Things like that. It's finding the intangibles in a way. And I know it doesn't hold a lot of weight on like, amateur draft stuff, but like it really does matter to NBA teams. So I think in regards to why in-person scouting matters more in games, a lot of it too is the camera doesn't show everything, right? There's different angles. So for example, when I go to TCU, I've been credentialed there for 7 years. I've seen something so much different. I'll make note of it. I say, hey, let me go watch this back. I watch the game back and I look at the exact same play and I'm like, oh, that's weird. I didn't notice this, and vice versa. There are things where I'm like, is this anything? Where I'll watch the game back in general. Every game I go to, I try and watch back for this exact purpose. Was there something on film I missed? Or if I wrote it down, whatever it is. And I think that ultimately really does matter because you're able to get more angles than you ever were. And you can see plays a little bit more clearly. It's also a lot easier to see something when it's your entire field of vision rather than a screen. I think that does matter a lot. With the combine, though, a big thing is you're able to talk to decision makers. They're extremely accessible. You're also just able to be around these people. You're very close, kind of just see how they are. You're able to see all of it up close. It's one thing to see somebody run fast in person. It's another to see them run on film. Like it looks just different. I think for me personally, I'm able to better grasp a lot of the information and stuff I'm watching when I'm in person than in film, because when you're watching on film, you watch so much film. Like I watch a game a day. After a while, things start looking the same in terms of like, okay, quick play or whatever, but an elite player stands out just that much more. And I think that's kind of the value of it. So I'll get to a few more of your questions, but let's talk about LinkedIn real fast. So as you know, LinkedIn, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and free. I personally have used LinkedIn Jobs plenty in my 9-to-5 work, and I swear by it. So I'm very much a LinkedIn Jobs fan. I think it's very valuable. It's very versatile. It's very easy to use. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. That's right, over 1 billion. That's with a B. Professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find elsewhere. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming and without all the drama. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So getting back here with some of these Q&A questions. I had a lot of these come in just within the last hour of recording. I really, first of all, appreciate all the questions you guys had. It meant a lot that you guys had so many questions after coming back from the NBA Draft Combine. And as always, really appreciate everybody who continues to make Locked On NBA Big Board the first listen of their day and keep listening. And shout out to the guys and girls who have been here for the entire year, who are here in August, October, kind of those dry areas, as well as the times now when it's really picking up. So Tyler asked, when we look back at the 2024 draft in 5 years, how will people remember it? It's a good question. Think about how we view 5 years ago's draft. 2019, we think generally pretty highly of it, I think. I mean, you have John Morant, turned out to be almost a superstar. Zion Williamson, if he was healthy more, I think we'd be talking about that same thing. There's been definitely some busts. Like, there's no way to really deny that. But it's also produced a lot of quality players. Brandon Clark before he got hurt. Nick Claxton was in that class. Cam Johnson. There's also Tyler Hero, Darius Garland, an all-star. Terrence Mann, P.J. Washington, Keldon Johnson, Kobe White, a front-runner for most improved player this year. I think this player was really talented, and I know that there's a lot of off-the-court stuff. But if we're talking just basketball, I mean, Kevin Porter Jr. was in this class, and he was a good player before. Grant Williams. The list goes on, right? There's Jordan Poole. There's Rui Hachimura, players that actually have played meaningful basketball for championship-level teams. A lot of players came from that draft. And I think actually the way people will remember this class is saying, why didn't we give it more context and give it more of a chance? I'm not going to say like, oh, it's a great class, because I did say earlier, it's one of the worst classes in the last 10 years, or really last 15 years. Honestly, this is probably the worst class since 2001, I think is what it was. or 2000. I have a hard time to really give it I don't think it's a death wish for the class though. I do think there are going to be some hidden gems where just like every year is going to be an all-star. If 2013 could produce 2 all-stars, why can't this one? So I think people remember it as a class that was judged too quickly and not given enough context all around. Because I think you could paint almost all of this first round and go, well, they didn't look better because, and there's a valid reason. Now, will it automatically mean they will be great? Who knows? But I do think it matters. Logan Adams asked, what's your stance on Bronny post-combine? That's a good question. I still don't think he would be in the combine if it wasn't for his dad. I don't think he'd even be on draft radars if it wasn't for his dad, but credit where credit's due. He played really well in the second game. He shot well. He hit the shots he was supposed to, open shots. It wasn't anything super complex. He made right passes. Somebody's going to draft him. I don't believe that and you're going to see this. It kind of goes back to the beginning, and I should have prefaced this at the beginning, especially with Bronny. You're going to hear him working out with every team. You're going to see he even has one with Utah coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Just because he's working out with Utah does not mean he is in consideration for the 29th or 32nd pick. That is people tying things related together that were not set. Just because you were working out with Utah, like, for example, Washington, they hold the second round pick. If Bronny interviews with them, I guarantee you will start seeing that in the 26th, or whatever it is, you're going to see them, and by whatever it is, I mean just any team. You can substitute this. Be careful with how you view the Bronny stuff. That's my big Bronny thing. That's the only thing I'm going to say about Bronny, because if it was anybody else, we wouldn't be talking about him this much. He's a 6'1" combo guard that plays defense, shoots fine, not a point guard. That's a very undesirable trait, but that's the end of the Bronny stuff. Jazz Culture BR asked, what are your thoughts on Ryan Dunn? Do you think his defense moves the needle well enough for him to be even a mid-first rounder? The defense is insane. He's the best defender in the class. He's the best defender since excluding Wembanyama, because he's pretty insane and obviously one of one. He's the best defender since Matisse Thybulle. Here's the thing, though. Matisse Thybulle's an incredible defender. He still struggles to get minutes. And because of that, I just can't see anybody giving him a guaranteed first-round contract, maybe at the end. And even then, that feels risky because that shot is busted. I know he used to shoot it earlier in his life, but the consistency is just not there. The touch isn't there. Really just not a fan of the offense. He's a 5 on offense that's 6'7", 6'8", maybe 6'9". And he'd be 1 through 5 on defense. I just don't think that's enough personally. Somebody asked about Enrique Freeman. Brian, he said, did Enrique Freeman boost his draft position? Before the combine invite, I could see him maybe sneaking into the end of the second round, but is there a chance for a mid-second? Yeah. I can tell you every single team I talked to about Enrique Freeman, because I saw him at Portsmouth. And let me actually just backtrack before I even finish that sentence. At Portsmouth, I had a lot of people saying, watch for Enrique Freeman. He's extremely intriguing, not just because of the tools, but because of who he is. And I didn't get to talk to him there. It's a little bit harder to talk to guys at Portsmouth than it is at the combine, because there's a whole media session at the combine. But I heard more of the same in the draft. I also got to talk to Enrique. He is one of those guys that he just loves basketball, and he happens to be incredible at basketball to be in this position. When you meet some of those guys, I think they really do stand out because they always want to get harder. And this is truly something that, it's a dream for everybody. But I think with some of these guys, it means a little bit more, and they're going to interview very well because of that. That's where the big difference is. Plus the strong work ethic. For those who don't know, he walked on to Akron. He was on an academic scholarship. Akron decided to host a open tryout. He was really good. Later became the MAC Player of the Year, 4-time All-MAC guy. And now he went from Portsmouth to G League Elite Camp to Combine. Just really good kid that I think he will get drafted. I think he's this year's guy that goes from Portsmouth to getting drafted. It happens almost every single year. I think he's that guy. Talentless KVOV, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's at Nerd Runner, said, from Rob Reed Toppage Group, how many of those guys do you expect to be picked in the top 5? I think Reed goes top 5. Has nothing to do with the 42-inch vertical. I think he's just undeniably productive, and he shoots better than almost anybody in the class, if not the very best. So I think he goes there. Rob Dillingham's tough because the NBA just keeps going away from size. he's probably the likely one to slip out, but also Topic got hurt. So nobody's going to be able to have him in for a workout if this is a serious injury. And by serious, I just mean for the next month. I think it might just end up being Reed. I do ultimately think Topic goes to the Spurs. Just go at 4 or 8. That's the tough one. I would say maybe 1. But ultimately, though, the thing is, like, I think Rob, if it were me, all 3 of them would go in the top 5. Just a little bit skeptical that, like, all of them, Topic has some issues with his shot. He probably is the second most likely. I'd say Reed is a lock. Rob's a swing one. So, more Bronny questions. Demon Edie Beta said, thoughts on Edie to Memphis at 9? That is a reach. I talked about Edie earlier. He's going to trick a lot of teams by being able to shoot right now, but it's not an NBA present tool. I'm a little bit worried about that. I personally stand by it. He's not going to play more than 25 minutes in the NBA any given night. Because of that, I can't take him in the lottery. Yeah, he'll be a good backup big, but I can't get there. Lottery guys got to be starters and play 25, 30 minutes a game. He can't do that. CM Basketball said, what did you think of Holland at the Combine? I think he can be a bigger Oladipo. Do you see the vision? Not Oladipo, but I do think he is good. I have him number 2 on my board. He needs to work through his shot, though. It's not good. He just all around the mechanics need an overhaul. I had heard that before. This is my first time seeing him in person in over a year. And yeah, it's got work to do. I think that's going to scare a lot of teams off. And I really do think when you look at his draft stock, that's a guy that it's really where the mocks say. And same thing with Zach Edey. Nobody asked this, but Zach Edey's stock is really, really high. I had that confirmed by almost every single person I talked to, a scout, anybody I talked to, they all said the same thing. Somebody asked, is Reed Shepherd the best point guard in the draft? He's not really a point guard, so no. I would probably, depending on how you define Topic, probably him. But he is the best guard, I would say, in the draft. So, and the last one before we hit a stopping point here for a moment. Colin asked, thoughts on Ulrich Chomchi? And I'm probably saying his name wrong because I say everybody's name wrong. But he's really theoretical. He's athletic, like not super athletic, like not bouncy athletic, but he's switchable enough. There's upside with shooting. The problem is it's all theoretical right now. He's the youngest player in the draft 1 day, 2 days, I think, actually, before even being eligible for only 2025. So teams will buy in. He's 100% getting drafted. He's theoretical. I don't mind the swing, but I wouldn't get your hopes up with him. Well, I'm going to answer a few more of these questions, but first, let me talk to you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That is the formula for winning championships and is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, last segment. Let's hammer through some of these Q&A questions. I had a question about the Orlando Magic. For those who don't know, I am also beyond Mavs draft, consider myself Magic draft too. I'm from Orlando. I live in Dallas now for the moment, soon to be Wizards draft, but irrelevant. The top 3 Magic prospects for me, they got to be able to shoot. Every single one of them. I'm not taking a non-shooter at this point. So for me, I would say number 1 is Jalen Tyson. I have him in my top 15. Dribble, pass, shoot, plays defense, super hard worker, perfectionist. Really like him. Tristan da Silva, one of the top shooters with size in the draft. I have some defensive concerns. And the last one, I don't know how hot this is, but I really, really like Alex Caravan. 6'11" wingspan. He measured really well. I think there's some underrated defense, knowing that he has strong defenders next to him. I think he can thrive off of that. Top tier shooter. He was the best shooter in the drills. I mean, that just kind of checks every box. We too got Game USA asked the player you would draft for the Houston Rockets. I'd trade the pick if I could. Otherwise, don't take Clingan. You can't have him and Şengün don't fit. I would try Reese Shea. I know he's not the most popular player, but man, actually, no, I disagree. I don't like that with Jabari Smith. I'm just gonna say Reed Shepherd. If they have to keep the pick, they 100% should trade the pick. But if I had to choose someone, just give me Reed Shepherd. He fits in. He makes up for the size Amen Thompson brings down the road. Obviously, with Fred VanVleet, it's a little tough. You can make it work. You can be more creative with him than a lot of the other options. Nico Harrison Muse asks, is there a real chance that Clingan turns out to be the best player in this draft? And on the other side, do you see a scenario where top 3 players in this draft end up being non-bigs? I think it's going to be hard for him to be the best player in the draft. He'd have to do a lot on the defensive end and be a double-double threat. I think it's like a little bit likely, at least some of that, but I'm talking like Depoy level stuff. Can't kind of get there. On the other side, do you see a scenario where top 3 players in this draft end up being non-bigs? No. I think there's going to be a big in there. I also really like Yves Missi. Like I think it's more likely that the top 3 players are all bigs than no bigs. So good question though. I don't know how to say this name, but somebody else asked, why isn't Solana a consensus top 10 pick in this draft, considering the lack of top end talent and upside? You rarely find players with his size, athleticism, shooting, and incredible motor. He already contributes to a pro league and is only 18 years old. Yeah, you're right. I think someone in this team is actually going to, in this draft, some team is going to take the swing on him, though. I mean, like you said, he's 18, has a lot of talent. He has a ton to be refined through. He's a great example of, is the context bad for him and he's just super young, that the shot will eventually get better, which it did improve a lot this year, and is the defense workable? Or does it even matter because he'd be playing potentially next to Wembanyama? That's where all indications seem to be in the top 10. So I agree that there's some things he has to iron out. But if you're looking for that overall top swing in the lottery, yeah, it's him. Ball is Life Sai asks, given they're close in ages, Buzelis that much better of a prospect than Nikola Jurisic? Buzelis has size advantage and is probably smaller than most realize, and Jurisic has a stronger body. Jurisic has some other issues. I think he has a tendency to – I think he cares a lot about getting his stats. I'll say that. There are times where once he did his damage, it looked like he was coasting, and that also, if you watch some of the last games of him in Europe, he just tried not to get hurt. I don't want to like make accusations or anything with this, but like I think he has a lot more interest in himself than the bigger picture at times. So no, but I'm also very low on Buzelis. I think – yeah, the size is close. But if he does end up being the shooter that he was labeled out to be, which, by the way, feels very unlikely, given that his mechanics are rough, he shoots better off the dribble than on the catch. And he's going to be asked to do a lot of catch and shoot and not that much off the dribble, outside maybe one dribble pull-ups, beating a closeout. I don't know. I just don't think either that great of prospects. I think talent-wise, yeah. I just ultimately, I don't know. Buzelis is a better prospect. Why didn't Isaiah Crawford, this is from Sponded Facts, why didn't Isaiah Crawford get an invite for the combine if he's a projected first-round pick? He is not, but he also probably should have been able to get elevated. They only took 5 players. They were projected to take at least 6, but just didn't happen. Bands916 asks, what are your top 3 picks for the Kings at 13? I think the Kings got to take a big somewhere. I know they need shooting depth. They need a point guard. But I think they got to take a rim protector. I would love Yves Missi. If he is there, like, that's number 1. I like Jalen Tyson. Keep him close. I don't think it's a reach. And Tyler Kolek, you know he's going to be good. Just take a point guard who fits in right away. So I hope that helps answer it. Rated asks, what's your opinion on Tyler Smith's defense? It's horrible. There's no nice way to put that. He is consistently lost. He needs to add a ton of strength. Look, he has to be an almost perfect shooter to really stick in the league because his defense is not playable right now in the NBA. Like, it is plain and simple. It is really bad, and I think people really overlook it because he's like 6'9", and they're like, oh, no, he can make it work because, he has foot speed, but almost everything else is off there. So I think that's something that people don't look at enough. Personally, I think people really miss that. So, yeah, that's kind of my take with it. Jordan asks, did Nikola Jurisic do enough to become a first-rounder? Yes. He played really well in the scrimmages. Again, he kind of tuned out for a bit. He might have just trying not to get hurt. I get it. But I do think he is going to play himself in the first round. He's tall. Jump shot's a little inconsistent because he has no arc. But somebody's going to say, hey, we can make it work. Corbin asked, what are your thoughts on two-way guys whose stock have fallen this year, namely Justin Edwards and DJ Wagner? For those who don't know, Wagner's not in – I keep wanting to say Wagner. Again, a Magic guy. I keep wanting to think Franz and Mo Wagner. DJ Wagner did not declare this year, but he is going to Arkansas, I believe, to be with Coach Cal again. He transferred from Kentucky. He can't shoot. Like, it's really tough. And I thought he separated well in high school. It didn't translate up. Like, and it wasn't like great, but it was like enough. It's tough. It's really tough to buy into him right now. I need to see more next year. Justin Edwards is interesting because the shot looks pretty real, but man, for somebody who was supposed to be this super great athlete, I mean, I saw him be explosive in Peach Jam 2 years ago. He tested really poorly athletically, and I just don't think you can overcome that. I get it. He was like fine on defense. I just don't think it was sufficient. Last question here. This is from Charles. From the combine drills / scrimmages, which players help themselves the most with their draft stock through this process? I'm going to go Baylor Shireman. Absolutely was one. He seemed to have some of the strongest feel for the game. KJ Simpson. I think Alex Caravan made impacts without even shooting. I think that was big. Help themselves. This is a tough one. The third one is a really tough one. I would say probably Oso Ighodaro. The big thing, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I've been saying he could be a top 30 prospect if he goes to the right team. If he doesn't, he's going to spend years in the wrong place, getting older, not really developing in all the right ways. This looked like an area of his game, the scrimmage, where it felt like, okay, there's actually a real reason to believe that he can do more than what he did at Marquette, where he was just a system guy. He created his own look a lot. He was not afraid to go to the basket. I really liked that. I would say him. I'm going to get to more of these questions next week because there were over 30 of them, and I got to 15, 20. But they were all very good questions, and I really want to read all of these. So I appreciate everybody who submitted a question. Appreciate everybody who continues to make Locked On NBA Big Board the first listen of your day. And we really appreciate you. We'll be back next week.